Dear viewers, with a deep sense of appreciation and hope, I welcome you to this path towards human discovery and enlightenment. Enjoy this video and have a great day. At the heart of spiritual rhetoric is the slippery notion of enlightenment, that ultimate portal out of the cave, a magical doorway that religious and spiritual seekers believe will grant them access to a transcendent reality and lead them to a life of equanimity. A direct experience of our own true nature, a knowing that is somehow above and beyond the influence of ego, a connection to the fabric of existence, it is all promised to lie within the blurry outlines of this mysterious state of enlightenment. Spiritual revelation is often imagined as a sojourn spent wreathed in the luminous aura of enduring bliss, its radiance mythologized as the illumination of the saint. In stories of saints and sages, of seers, sages and sannyasis, it is common to find souls bathed in the golden aura of a divine light that will forever dispel the shadows of earthly suffering and strife. Yet this happy image hides another, deeper truth, a truth that the dazzling outward face of the Enlightenment ideal often obscures. The book is not only about the light that shines on this path but also its long shadow, the hidden damage done along the road to awakening. Throughout the following chapters, we will explore a journey of psycho-spiritual inquiry, shedding light on the often silent pathologies of waking up, the struggles, suffering and torments that rally to meet the boon of spiritual awakening, and the dark night of the soul that is usually left unspoken and unexplored. We seek to both laud the glory and grace of the spiritual path, and also to honor the dark, hidden depths and struggles of the human heart in order that the shadow of enlightenment might be brought to light for those who wish to walk it, and fellow travelers of the revolution might be inspired, informed and supported. On that note, viewers, let's address this together, this exercise in consciousness raising, this real-time meridian revelation. Let these pages be your lighthouse, and your ship's log, because for ages the way to wisdom has run like this: know thyself. Trying to be perfect. We are drawn into the idealizing trap when we believe there is a better way of being, a way of being that is superior in some respect to the person we currently are. There might be a prepared, timeless inner self to which we can hope to return, a state of perfection, of clarity and peace of mind and body. Perfect stillness, perfect grace. Perfect. There is a vision of completeness that we mistake for a possible way of being. A paradise that could be our home if we could escape from the bonds of our past. Such an illusion seems desirable and worth pursuing, and moreover, there are currently practices that claim to help us get there. This myth of transcendence seeps itself not just through our own personal desires, but throughout the cultural mythology surrounding spiritual awakening. Books and films, and indeed spiritual teachings themselves, tend to tell stories of enlightened beings who shimmer with heavenly joy and calm, seemingly untouched by the ordinary and everyday afflictions of human existence. They are characters of glowing goodness, half-realized otherworldly beings who can inspire our projections and our longings for transcendence. But with deeper practices, intensified self-work, as we move toward ever more idealized senses of waking up, we often find ourselves in the grip of the clinging duality of seeking perfection. We also find ourselves caught up constantly and unconsciously comparing ourselves to an ideal, perhaps an old perfectionist narrative where we measure the current state of awakening against some other idealized self-image, an imagined super-you, as it were. This sets up a habit of self-judgment that can lead to feelings of not being good enough, not being worthy, perhaps even creating a sense of feeling too high vibrational for this mundane world. At the same time, it is through accepting our defaults that we can be free from the burden of perfectionism. We realize that we are not enlightened by transcending our humanity but by embodying it fully, with all its contradictions. In struggling with our defaults we are ultimately coddled into growth. When we let go of the expectation of perfection, we can open our hearts to greater self-compassion and self-acceptance. We begin to treat ourselves with more gentleness and care, realizing that our difficulties and frailties are not evidence of a failure to attain enlightenment but rather part of the path to self-discovery. We realize that enlightenment is not about becoming perfect, but rather about being fully human, in all of our messy, beautiful humanness. When you embark on the path to spiritual awakening, emotions and feelings are suddenly awakened too. A wild ride takes place inside you, and, like a roller coaster over the mind's landscape, tear after tear drops down your face. Suddenly, everything can come up, feelings of excitement and frustration, pain, anger, shame, guilt and sadness. Hurt, loneliness and despair make you question your life and your place in the world, and you wonder whether the path was the right decision to make. Suddenly, fear of being yourself enters the equation. Insecurity and fear of failure rear their heads, and all you want is the comfort of numbing yourself. But the ride shows no signs of stopping. You either continue with wild abandon, or you jump off the roller coaster. You're caught in the ever-recurring pattern of dis-ease, holding on tight, fearing to fall off, but unable to change direction. It's as if your emotions are now unraveling like a tangled ball of wool, unraveling your thoughts into a spiral. Yet, the roller coaster does eventually come to a stop. At the core of this emotional upheaval is a challenge to integrate with the source of our suffering, our shadow self, which is composed of all those things we've repressed or denied about our psyche. We each have many levels of psyche, and we usually only have access to one or two of these levels on a daily basis. But in a psychotic break, we have access to all of them, and our reason breaks down, but this causes us to access the darker parts of ourselves that we've always tried to repress or avoid. From this perspective, psychosis is a healing opportunity, as long as we are able to face our fears and embrace the parts of ourselves that we have not wanted to consider. When we are emotionally upset, we can experience a sense of plunging into a chasm of despair, whether that be in the form of sadness, grief or loneliness. We might feel like we are plummeting to the bottom of a deep dark well, and cannot seem to see a ray of light or the way out. We might be experiencing what could be described as the dark night of the soul, a time of acute spiritual crisis and inner struggle, when we are forced to confront our worst fears and anxieties. We might feel like the fire of hell is burning within us, and cannot see a way out of our existential predicament. But we also might find ourselves transformed to a new phase of spiritual development. Yet storm clouds of emotional angst and anguish color those periods, perhaps giving way to at times euphoric ecstasy, a taste of the eternal, of literally tapping into the divine, within, and a sense of being part of something greater than myself, an expansive feeling of beauty and awe, a sense then of the meaning and purpose in it all, which might be likened here to being in tune with emotionally surging waves, riding the ups and downs with finesse, so to speak, with what I have come to regard as riding the waves. Still, the pathway to spiritual consciousness isn't about escaping emotion, it's about fully experiencing it, like a clear blue sky filled with puffy white clouds. Through the process of emotional alchemy we can transmute pain into wisdom, fear into courage, and suffering into compassion. By stepping deep into the river of our emotional life, we encounter the fullest opportunity for healing and transformation. This is how the work of emotional alchemy shows us that we can welcome the fullness of our emotional experience, with all its chaotic turbulence and richness of color and texture. We can rest in knowing that whatever emotion we experience can become a catalyst that carries us deeper into the truth of our own identity. Relationships are like a series of mirrors that reflect back to us different aspects of ourselves that we might not be consciously aware of. In this way, our romantic partners, friends and members of our family can act as sacred objects that help us on our spiritual journey of self-discovery and love. We might have a clearer sense of what remains hidden from our consciousness when we engage in intimate relationships, as the nature of these connections gives us the opportunity to explore our shadow and shine a spotlight of light more effectively. Misunderstandings and miscommunication are some of the most common relationship problems. We often have important things to say to one another, but we can't find the words, or we don't know how to say them in a way that is open and honest, or our emotions get in the way of clearly explaining what we mean. Intense feelings can paralyze our speech or muddle our expression, leaving us feeling unheard and frustrated. When couples learn to communicate effectively with appreciation, compassion and curiosity, they not only have better sex, they also feel closer to one another. Learning the art of speaking and listening from a place of love and mutual respect requires practice to say the right thing in the right way, with the right tone of voice. Active listening and speaking to be heard are at the heart of coaching dynamics, and form the basis for all relationship education and therapy. A second contributor to relationship stress comes from values and priorities. As we change and evolve on an interpersonal level, this can cause us to become more aligned with our value system, which might differ from others. Such valuational differences can be seen in career, lifestyle, spirituality, etc. But, of course, who is right? If we cannot agree, does this mean the relationship is hopelessly broken? No. A relationship is an imperfect container for divine love. When we sit across the table from someone, we do not expect them to agree on everything, nor do we necessarily expect to. The skillful thing to do is find a way to work together despite the differences and build relationships based on shared values and respect. Empathy, respect, and a willingness to compromise are essential. As we unfold and unfurl on the path to samadhi, we upend relationships and every other aspect of our lives. Some relationships become diminished and depleted when we have not taken the time to develop ourselves enough to be loved and loving as we evolve. Other relationships deepen with our growth, and we learn to dig deep for reasons to stay connected. Working with these relationships to become whole together takes time, patience, compassion and empathy, and, most of all, willingness to find our way through change. Learning to develop in our own way and grow together is challenging, but, if we embrace the opportunity and learn how to co-evolve, we can stay together when we've done the work to evolve. We learn to hold on to one another in a way that's different from what we've done in the past. We learn to hold on and keep our eyes open, seeking, searching and, yes, fighting for what we know to be love. One thing that can help us create healthy relationships is learning to set boundaries, with ourselves and with others. Healthy boundaries are ways to define what we need and want for ourselves, identify and honor what we can't allow, and respect the needs and autonomy of the other, my needs and my values, in some way, but not yours. This can mean saying yes to oneself or a relationship, but it also can mean saying no. When you learn to set boundaries in this way, with kindness and integrity, you're creating a space between you and the other, in which you're not afraid that what you want might be taken away, you're not trying to control or manipulate the other in any way, but instead you trust that the relationship, and your autonomy, can handle these changes. As your boundaries grow stronger, the container of love and relationship grows stronger, too. While seeking their spiritual development, they might often ask such questions as, who am I, why am I here? What is the meaning of life? These questions are about fundamental existential human experience, going to the very roots of our life experience and what we can know about it. In order to try to answer them, we might decide to examine our very being, our life, our physical existence, the planet, and maybe the cosmos itself, and the question might emerge, why do I exist? As we try to move into exploring existential matters, we often get deeply entangled in a maze of existential questioning, and suddenly find ourselves wading through deep, existential waters, drowning in existential confusion. We don't know what we don't know where to look, we feel stuck, confused, hopeless. We'll talk about the temptation to seek security on a journey that is by its very nature destabilizing, disorientating and without fixed points of reference. As part of the process of deconstruction that anyone attempting to awaken to reality must go through, we'll look at its insidious effects. We'll probe the terrifying, bewildering, exhilarating middle passage of life, between false security and rock-solid truth. We'll agree to venture into the abyss of the unknown with nothing but a shimmying of the spine to guide us. When we stand on the threshold of collapse and uncertainty is the best we have, we must practice radical equanimity. Whatever we may believe or disbelieve about the ultimate nature of reality, we'll stand on the edge of the abyss and peer into it, not knowing what lurks on the other side. Existential angst comes up against a paradox of choice, the unencumbered freedom to make ourselves in a meaningless universe. And while this freedom of self-creation is highly liberating in principle, it is equally debilitating in practice. After all, there is only so much one can do when faced with the overwhelming freedom to do anything. But it is through existential freedom that we can step out of our proverbial cages and, armed with the courage to be, make peace with ourselves and the world around us. We are left with a blank canvas and a palette of colors, free to paint whatever we want. In the face of such existential confusion, it can feel like a safe harbor to shore up uncertainty, to latch on to dogma, ideology, and the certainty that they appear to offer. But it is in the uncertainty of our doubts, not the certainty of our beliefs, that lies the true wisdom. It is in the openness of our hearts and minds that the seeds of change germinate, bloom and lead us to degrees of novel and profound insight. You walk into the unknown with eyes wide open, knowing that the path will reveal itself step by step. Eventually, then, the spiritual journey is not about answers to the existential questions, but about the mystery itself, about learning to dance in the shadowlands, about finding the meaning not in the destination but in the journey itself, about finding in the bends and breaks of the human roadway that the destination is not a place we arrive at, but a state we find ourselves in, the state of wonder, of awe, of praise, of reverence for the mystery that lies at the center of creation, finding the madness in the mystery, the meaning in the madness, the purpose in the journey itself. In the spiritual context of self-discovery, the shadow self plays a major role, a mysterious source of power, dwelling in the nether regions of the unconscious, containing the seeds of our greatest fears and most forbidden desires, collecting the debris and castaways of our childhood insecurities. The shadow self is the self that we do not want to own and which we reject and disown, the selfish and mean parts of our being, the parts that we repress and deny, the parts that we would gladly throw overboard to propel ourselves to the wonders of the best self that we could ever wish to become. Facing the shadow is to face the darkness within, to encounter our own monsters, the shadowy other side of our personalities, and to embrace our whole selves. Such shadow work is not for the timid. One must venture to the literal and metaphorical underground to turn the beams of our awareness on those deep, indistinct places of our psyche we prefer to keep dark. By facing the darkness, we discover that there is no real opposition between dark and light, for the shadow, like the shadow of a tree, is created only by light. You can never get rid of your shadow, just as you can never get rid of darkness once you have discovered light. By embracing your shadow self, you become a whole person in the bell-shaped, curved sense of the word, paradoxical and contradiction-resistant, which is ultimately Zen. We do not need to fear the shadow self nor push it away, for it is in the shadow that stands our greatest promise for creative flourishing, for depth of feeling, and for access to unknown sources of energy and aliveness. Tapping into the potential of our shadow self will enable us to unlock a universe of human inventiveness and vitality. The shadow self contains the keys to a vault of treasures, treasures beyond our wildest expectations, if only we know how to open it. Ultimately, the spiritual path is an integrative one, the path to wholeness or self-acceptance that recognizes my light and my darkness. And if one is to experience the fullness of life, then one had best be willing to embrace all of it with love rather than turning away, catching a fleeting glimpse of my shadow self and then retreating. In that moment of awakening, I had remembered the parts of myself that I had disowned, that had become separated, dismembered parts of my larger self-experience. I had finally begun to embrace that which I had rejected. With love, I had begun the process of integrating the shadow self within. It was then, and is now, that I take a step closer toward realizing my true being, myself that is light and shadow, completely and truly alive. Before we end this transformational journey, it is valuable to recognize how far we have come. We have followed the twists and turns of our inner path, the shadows at our feet, and the light upon our back. We have had our glimpses of insight, moments of lightness and laughter, and moments of solitude. We have risked being shaken by a new legacy and opened ourselves to a life of potential, choice and expansion. In our odyssey together, we have learned that the path to the light of the Spirit is not a straight line or an upward climb, but instead a meandering road full of twists and turns, zeniths and plateaus. In becoming believers in the refractory nature of light, whose brightness flows through the infinite prism of colors and shadows, we have discovered the wonders of the human condition and the sublime wisdom that the highest intellectual attainment is not in transcending humanity, but in embracing it. In the path towards enlightenment we are, in essence, learning to cultivate compassion and understanding towards ourselves, and we're also learning to cultivate compassion and understanding towards others. We are learning to react to ourselves with compassion and understanding. That's a process of understanding that we are human beings, we make mistakes, we mess up, we're creating this moment by moment, and we're works in progress, and there's nothing wrong with that, and we're also learning to react to others with compassion. We're all together in this, and compassion and understanding helps to create the space for things to transform. Finally, with a grateful nod to the etymological origins of our vocabulary, we can bring our current segment of the journey to a close with blessings offered to the path that we have taken, each step of the way having been an act of holy happenstance, an act of self-discovery and self-expression that, when we can see ourselves through the eyes of another, reveals the holy in all of us, carrying with us those lessons and those insights as we go into another part of the journey, knowing, at least perhaps, that the way of the world is less point A to point B, and more a process of distillation, transformation and wonder, as we let ourselves be seen as we really are. So stand at this threshold and leap into space. Hold out your arms, the universe is wide open and the journey to the light can be as long and as wide. Step out, you have the knowledge and sight to carry you. Walk in the open door, everything you'll ever need is inside. B, it's the pulse of life and time. Live, time flies like light in the sky. And C, because the world can be whatever you want. Walk in this wide open doorway, everything you need is on the inside. In conclusion, let us keep in mind that the path of spiritual transformation is not a place, it is a way of being, a way to be present, purposeful and passionate, to be alive, fully alive, a way to keep walking, gracefully and gratefully, knowing that the beauty of the journey is the journey, not the destination.
If you liked this video, please like and share it, because a real hero shares the inspiration.